If you're part of this community, then you already know why we dig into details that most people overlook. Because the past isn't just a story, it's a toolkit. And before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss deep-cut history and survival insights like this. Now, let's get right into it, because the habits that WWII families abandoned, some out of necessity, some out of sheer ingenuity, can teach modern survivalists more than most prep books ever will. The opening minute matters, so here's the hook. One of the most overlooked truths about WWII home life is that the war didn't just change what people bought, it changed how they saw the entire idea of consumption. Overnight, families had to rewire their thinking. They stopped depending on shops, stopped trusting supply chains, and stopped assuming that buying more was the solution to anything. What's fascinating is that some of those changes lasted well beyond the war. Even when store shelves filled back up, many households never returned to their old spending habits. They discovered that self-reliance wasn't just patriotic, it was stabilizing. And the methods they used to replace store-bought goods are still viable today, especially for anyone serious about preparedness or simply wanting to cut dependence on fragile modern systems. Families stopped buying chemical cleaners once they learned to make better ones themselves. During the war, commercial cleaners weren't just expensive. They were often unavailable due to restrictions on chemicals and packaging. Out of necessity, households turned to simple combinations like vinegar, baking soda, and washing soda. These weren't alternatives. They became the normal way to keep a home clean. Even after the war, many families never returned to store-bought brands because the homemade solutions were cheaper, safer, and far more reliable. The takeaway for a modern survivalist is straightforward. If supply chains falter or budgets tighten, the ability to mix your own cleaners is a foundational skill. Vinegar-based disinfectant, ash water for grease removal, lemon rinds steeped in alcohol for degreasing. These methods work, and you can make all of them with ingredients you can store long-term. A practical example is creating a simple all-purpose cleaner by steeping citrus peels in vinegar for 2 weeks, straining it and diluting it with water. That's something a World War II household would have done without a second thought. Families abandoned store-bought bread after perfecting home baking. Bread shortages, rationing, and irregular store supplies forced almost every household to bake at home. But something interesting happened. Many families realized that homemade bread was cheaper, more filling, and longer lasting. When the war ended, they didn't rush back to the baker for daily loaves. This is a skill that deserves revival today. Baking isn't just nostalgic, it is a direct path to food security. If you store flour and yeast correctly or maintain a sourdough starter, you can produce consistent food even during disruptions. Steps a modern prepper can repeat include maintaining a sourdough culture so you never depend on packaged yeast, and, learning no-knead recipes that rely on long fermentation instead of labour. WWII families did this out of necessity, but those habits gave them stability. Families stopped buying disposable kitchen items when they realised reusables worked better. Wax, paper, aluminum foil, and other disposable goods became scarce. Households turned to reusable cloth wraps, glass jars, and tin containers. These habits stuck because they saved money, reduced waste, and, simplified the home. For modern survivalists, this mindset remains relevant. Reusable goods are not just environmentally responsible, they are resilient. A set of tight-lidded jars or tin containers can replace years of disposable packaging. If you're creating a pantry with shelf-stable goods, storing dried beans, flour, herbs and spices in jars replicates exactly what wartime families did to extend freshness and prevent pest damage. Families stopped buying new clothing and learned to remake what they had. Fabric was rationed, zippers were redirected to the military, and new garments were extremely hard to obtain. The make do and mend movement wasn't just a slogan. It was, a way of life. Families would turn old trousers into children's pants, coats into skirts, and even worn sheets into shirts. Even after the war ended, millions of folks kept up with these habits, simply because it made good financial sense. For anyone looking to build self-reliance today, the lesson isn't just about sewing, really. It's about learning to see textiles as valuable resources, not just things to throw away. And, families also stopped buying commercial fertilizers once they started composting. With chemicals being redirected to agriculture and military use, home gardeners had to get creative to keep their soil fertile. Composting became, honestly, just about universal. Nothing was wasted. Vegetable scraps, wood ash, newspaper, and even hair from brushes all went into the compost piles. After the war, loads of households kept up with this system because, frankly, it worked better than anything you could buy in the shops. And, families stopped buying convenience foods when rationing forced them to start cooking from basic staples. Canned soups, packaged meals, and pre-made sauces disappeared from the shelves almost overnight. Households went back to scratch cooking, relying on pantry staples like beans, oats, potatoes, and lard. Even when convenience foods returned, a lot of families never really went back to them, since scratch cooking produced more food for less money. Families also stopped buying gardening supplies after they learned how to save seeds. The real lesson behind all 7 of these habits is that families didn't just survive shortages, they actually built systems that made them stronger than before. They became producers, not just consumers. And that, I think, is exactly the sort of mindset that still matters today. If you'd like more guides like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel, share this video with other history lovers, and help keep this legacy of survival knowledge alive.